So now I'm gonna take you to the maersk tower, and as we have done very often before, we're starting down here, very close to the central part of the Copenhagen city. And in this case, we will start right at the corner here. And just to repeat the story of this little tour is part of the theme on storytelling and architecture. And the storytelling that we are going to focus upon here is the storytelling about high rises and how high rises can be landmarks in the city, in a city that most of all consists of relatively low buildings and some very extensive and characteristic profiles on buildings that are raising above the overall 5-6 story high levels. And the idea about buildings as such being landmarks and you could say icons to kind of find your way through the city with. So in the distance, we see here the lakefront. We are looking towards here. So that's this lakefront that we're looking at here. And the building that we're going to go for is placed here, and that is this building. This is the maersk tower. So from this point, I'm going to cross over this bridge, and I'm going to walk along the forefront, or excuse me, the lakefront. This is a picture from the afternoon, so I'm in the shadow over here, and the sun is shining from west towards the east, and I'm walking along a cool, shaded promenade until I reach this point where I want to go to the left. And when I do that, I go into this part of Nørrebro, which is relatively closed and relatively dense also. This was originally built for workers, and it is an area that consists of small 2-room apartments and very narrow streets and narrow backyards. And as a characteristic, this is a typical image of such a front of such a building with in this case 5 stories high. So I'm going down through this street, through this workers' neighborhood until I get to this point. And at that point, I can suddenly see the maersk tower very clearly. So from here on, I'm going to go on to the maersk tower, and I'm going to enter through this lobby and pedestrian area, which is around this maersk tower, and I'm going to go to the top. And the thing is that the top has public access, and that allows everybody to come out and have this magnificent view of Copenhagen towards the east. And that is also where you really perceive this, you could say, very homogeneous base, if you could call it that, with these few buildings that raise above the base that consists of the city as such. I'm going to go down again, and I'm going to go cross over here. And before I cross over, I have a look back to this building and see what a beautiful architecture it actually is. It's very successful. It is designed by an office that is called C.F. Møller Architects, one of the biggest offices in Denmark. And they are very clever on specifically health buildings. And actually the situation is that in this area that we are in here, we have a lot of so-called health buildings. So over here we have the big national hospital with where all kinds of specialties can be treated, and where all kind of emergency in very complicated cases can be either brought by car or ambulance or by a helicopter to a platform on top of the hospital. But before we get over there, we're gonna pass by here and see a relatively new healthcare center for cancer patients. It's this one. It is 5 years old, and what has been kind of the idea behind this building was that in an area where you actually have pretty many high scale, upscale buildings, then in this case, for cancer people, cancer patients that are very sensitive in all kinds of matters, it has been an issue about lowering down the scale so that it felt intimate and nice and cozy and home-like for the cancer patients that have to go and have their treatments in this specific spot. After the cancer hospital, I'm passing by here, and I'm coming down to this corner, and down at this corner I will have an opportunity to look in that direction and in that direction. And this that I will show you now gives you an idea about the big scale that is actually taking place in this area. This is the Panum Institute. A Panum Institute is where all kinds of laboratories are, and also where doctors, nurses, dentists, and other kind of healthcare education takes place. Almost every student who have had anything to do with healthcare in Copenhagen would have been here in the Panum Institute sooner or later. And if I look in the other direction, then I look to the main hospital, the main Rigshospitalet, National Hospital, and you can see that platform for helicopters up on top of here. And you can also see that we are far beyond the 5-story high building. Excuse me, that was not the purpose. We're far beyond the 5-story high building here. But that's also because this is a very specific building for hospital care and so forth. This building over here is also very new. It was opened in 2019, and it wasn't even taken into use before Corona began to really flow in over Denmark's borders. And today, right now, in these hours, this is actually the emergency part of the hospital, where all kinds of COVID-19 cases from Copenhagen and surroundings that has to be in special care. They are in this part of the National Hospital. From the National Hospital, I'm gonna go along this park here. This is the biggest park in Copenhagen. It's called Fælledparken. It's a very nice park because it has such a scale to it. So it's really like having a big horizon when you're in there. And this is a place where specifically in the summertime, all kinds of plays, soccer, handball, all kinds of plays take place in this very big park. And I'm going to show you a little bit of what it's like. We are entering this corner, and let's see what tells us here. Sorry for the noise. It is a relatively big park. That building over there is a national stadium. So that is what goes on in this corner, and I'm going to move along here until I reach this part and reach this little pavilion, which is a bus stop for several lines in this area. And from there, I'm going to go down along the lakefront, which is, I'm walking along here, and it looks a little bit like that to give an impression about the neighborhood here. Again, sorry for the noise. And I look back out into the lake. Eastbound lakefront here. A little more calm picture of the lake from this end of them. There are 4 of them, as you may have recognized so far. And if you take a jogging tour and run all the way around, then it's like 8.5 kilometers. From there, I'm gonna walk along this lakefront, and it looks a bit like this. These are chestnut trees, and chestnut trees are very unique for Copenhagen. Not unique, that you can't say that they are unique, but you can say that they are kind of like a symbolic tree of Copenhagen. You see them very, very many places. And in May specifically, they're really beautiful because they have these kind of flowers that stand out and look like lights that are really significant for many parts of Copenhagen in May. I'm going to walk a little bit further along this lakefront, and to my left, I will now see some workers' buildings. They are called the potato rows, and they were actually built for workers. And you can see they're not very large. Today, they're very popular row houses. And when it used to be, when they were built for people living in two-room flats in the ground floor and first floor and second floor, then you would very often see that one family lives in one building as this one or this one, and takes all three floors into use. They're very popular and they're very cozy, and there is a lot of internal activities between the in citizens and inhabitants of these very narrow streets. And if we just look at them here, you can see that these are the rows, and they are very dense and very geometrical in a sense also. And this was more or less the story for today, and looking forward to see you next week.